One thing people don't talk enough about when it comes to following Jesus is how lonely it can feel sometimes. People talk a lot about the peace that comes from following God. They talk about purpose, they talk about blessings, and those things are very real. But what people don't always mention is that when you start walking closely with God, your life begins to change in ways you didn't expect. Certain desires start fading, certain relationships stop fitting, and sometimes even the future you imagine for yourself begins to look completely different. And suddenly you realize something. The path you're walking isn't the same path most people around you are on. Jesus actually warned us about this. In Matthew 7:14, he says, "The gate is narrow and the way is hard that leads to life, and those who find it are few." Few, not many. Following Jesus was never meant to be the crowded road, and sometimes that means the journey can feel lonely. Over the last several years of my walk with God, I've experienced a lot of loss. Not just in the obvious ways, but in the quiet ways that happen when God starts reshaping your life. Sometimes when God begins working deeply in your life, it can feel like everything is just being stripped away. Desires you once had start fading. Friendships start changing. Dreams and paths you thought you'd be on shifting into something completely different. It can almost feel like you're being reduced down to nothing. But sometimes God allows that because he wants to rebuild your life on a stronger foundation. Over the past few years, I've gone through a lot personally. I lost someone that I deeply love. I've lost friendships that I thought would always be in my life. I lost a best friend of over 20 years. And I also lost my mom to pancreatic cancer. We knew that one was coming for a while, and we had years to prepare for it, but that doesn't make the loss hurt any less. When multiple losses happen within a few years like that, it can feel like your whole world is shrinking. I know I felt that way. And when you're already someone who has felt different in life, that loneliness can feel even heavier. For instance, I've always been a little different from the world around me. I'm a mixed-race gay man who follows Christ, and my journey of faith hasn't always fit neatly into people's expectations. So there have been seasons where I felt like I'm walking this road mostly alone. But over time, I'm realizing something important. Sometimes the loneliness isn't punishment, it's preparation. God often does some of his deepest work in quiet seasons. Think about it. Moses spent years in the wilderness before leading Israel. David spent years alone in fields before becoming a king. Jesus himself spent 40 days and 40 nights in the wilderness before beginning his ministry. God often prepares people in seasons that feel hidden. And even though this season of my life has felt small in certain ways, God hasn't left me completely alone. He's brought a couple brothers in Christ into my life who are helping me walk through this season. These brothers might not always be as accessible as my personality would like them to be, but they're reminders that God still provides people in the journey. And during this season, God has also been reshaping my path in ways I'd never expected. I entered a career I never thought or imagined I would have, and at one point, I actually burned out from it. But after changing my circumstances, it actually gave me more time with God, more time to pray, more time to think, and more time to build a future that God and I are creating together. Right now, I'm working on a lot of things. I'm writing books, I'm writing poetry, I'm making music, I'm acting, I'm building this YouTube channel and creating content. And if I'm being honest, sometimes it feels super slow. Sometimes it feels like no one notices. Sometimes it feels like no one cares. And that can feel lonely. But I'm learning that seasons like this are often where God prepares what comes next. And through it all, I've realized something that gives me peace. Following Jesus doesn't mean the easiest path. It means experiencing loss. It means experiencing waiting and loneliness. But even in these seasons, I've learned something that matters more than anything else. Having Jesus is worth it. Because even when everything else changes, he doesn't. He never does. Sometimes the loneliest seasons with God are the ones where he's shaping you the most. So if following Jesus has made you feel lonely at times, you're not broken and you're not strange. You might just be walking in a different direction than the crowd. What are some of the changes that you've noticed in your walk with Christ? Let me know in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to continue growing spiritually with me, feel free to like and subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.